Hello my friends, yesterday this video was published from the Pokrovsk direction. Ukrainian UH-60 Black Hawk helicopters landing the special group, the special forces of GUR, Ukrainian Military Intelligence. It was a very fast, brief landing operation, helicopter flown away and infantry continued the assault. On this video some of the tracers were spotted. It means that probably Russians tried to shut down those Black Hawk helicopters. As you might see, this Ukrainian infantry group is dispersed along the field. It is a very smart move not to let Russians to kaput everyone with the help of several drones or single drone strike, artillery strike. Here is our soldier and below here, maybe here, and they all go to the same direction. Well, I gathered as much information as possible relative to this operation. In this video, I'm gonna tell you everything available for this hour, but still there are lots of the unknown factors. What I might tell you that even though this video was published yesterday, but the operation itself was conducted around 3 days ago on October 29th. Why do I think that it was conducted on 29th of October? Because we already heard the reports about the GUR operation in Pokrovsk area. Some analytics as Thorkill, he's from Poland, already wrote about it on 29 of October. Yeah, without details, but later on he added, then this video was published. The place where helicopters landed the GUR special forces was not far away from this industrial area in Pokrovsk, which as you might see is located in the gray area. Let's go to the standard Google map. Those are exactly the coordinates of the place or the building which was captured, or you may call it liberated, by Ukrainian GUR special forces. However, the fight continued just for several hours. Judging on the drone videos which were published by Russians, unfortunately GUR suffered some of the losses. Even the local building that was taken by special forces was hit by several of the drones with fiber optic cable control. Plus, as you might see, the thermal cameras really operate well, highlighting infantry forces. Well, I looked through this video entirely. It's hard to judge whether Ukrainian operation was successful or not, but yeah, losses were there 100%. And from what I also understood, the part of the GUR forces were taken out from the position after several hours. So I wouldn't say that this operation was successful or not successful at this moment, but clearly Russians controlled this area with the help of the drones. And whatever you send or land there will be under the drone fire. That's why any sort of the vehicle operation to Pokrovsk and from Pokrovsk they are not possible. And those UH-60 helicopters were spotted even before, during their brief flight to this local field. This is the video from the Russian drone. Here you can see UH-60 helicopter flying at the very, very low altitude, and there is one more UH-60 also at the very low altitude. Yeah, here it goes, very close to my image, but clearly it is a UH-60. I think Ukraine has 3 of those. By the way, one was purchased by Czech people. They gathered some of the money to purchase the helicopter. I think it was back in 2022, so Ukrainian special forces used those helicopters in different missions. As you might also notice, this drone's task is just to stay on the road and wait for Ukrainian vehicles. So the drone operator is just monitoring the road, and then he witnesses the vehicle movement, he just lifts off and flies into it. In this case, the attack is happening very fast, and Ukraine is also using this technique. This video was published today, filmed by Ukrainian soldiers. They say that several of the vehicles were kaputted by those drones, and they found the one just staying on the road. It's the fiber optic control drone, and our guy just cut this cable with his mouse. Yeah, no more control, and so that's the dummy drone after it, you can see. Yeah, that's the strategy of how Russians and Ukrainians use those ambush type of the drones. But let's go back to the GUR landing operation. UH-60 helicopters were also spotted and filmed by locals in the nearby villages. As you might see, they fly at the very, very low altitude. Those helicopters, one and the second one. Yeah, very close to the ground. Well, Russians do not use the Panzer 1S system deployed very close to the front lines, but they have portable manpads like, for example, Igla system that may easily intercept those helicopters. That's why they fly as low as possible. During the start of the war, Russia sent lots of the helicopters to Gostomel, and some of them were intercepted by the same Igla system. Well, not many, but several were hit for sure, even flying at the very low altitude. The key factor for those operations is the speed. You go, you land, you fly away. It should be done very, very fast. I'm sure that Ukrainian pilots and GUR infantry practice that many of the times. It also reminds me the operation in Mariupol. Then many of the Ukrainian infantry forces were delivered in encircled area using Mi-8 helicopters. I think back then Ukraine lost just one helicopter. The rest of the operations were conducted successfully. If we may speak about the success relative to Mariupol operation, because after all our soldiers were encircled and some of them are still in the Russian prison, which is very, very bad. But one guy who landed there, he survived and he walked away. He stayed in those underground basements of Azovstal factory for several days. Then during the night, somehow he managed to get out from encircled area of Mariupol and he went to Ukrainian controlled territory and joined the Ukrainian armed forces once again. I watched the interview with that guy. It is the crazy story, but it happened really. But after all, I think that those kind of the operations, they cannot be conducted any longer. Let me explain you what I mean. Sorry, we have the watermark on this video, but you can see here it's the UH-60 helicopter landing infantry. Yeah, everything is on fire. And there's the other helicopter nearby conducting the same operation, and this one takes off and flies right away. But it's not the operation that happened allegedly on 29th of October. No, this one happened in March of 2024 on territory of the Russian Federation, Belgorod Oblast, the village of Kozinka. Yeah, back then Ukraine tried to destabilize Russia from within, attacking some of the territories of Russia. Also, there was the Kursk operation ongoing later on, but this was one of those big attempts. Well, back then Ukrainian landing operation was definitely a successful one. Helicopters flown, all of the Ukrainian special forces went to the local village. They eliminated the Russian army and evacuated. No losses, as it was reported. Perfectly done, conducted by Ukrainian GUR. And the key factor for this success that Russians were not ready. They were caught off guard. There were no drones. Russians had not enough forces to repel the sudden attack, so they were flat-lined. But here, if we speak about Pokrovsk direction and Russian army that concentrated lots of the drones and forces in this particular spot, I think that those landing operations, they're just useless. Because every freaking movement is being controlled by surveillance drones, by FPV, by Mavics, and so on. Yeah, by the way, here you can see this landing spot, so I was right about position. It was geolocated and confirmed by the Myco Sense 3 analytic. Unfortunately, guys, this operation lasted just for several hours and unfortunately Ukraine had losses. So our guys moved by not more than 500 meters, I would say, till reaching this building, and they were already encountered Russian drones. Right away they flown because it's very short distance to the Russian control positions. They fly all the time over Pokrovsk. It is not like the landing operation in Belgorod of 2024. Now the realities are totally different. And back then the priority for Russia was not really to use drones in Belgorod. They were also concentrated on Donbass. So I think that GUR will not conduct those kind of the landing operations any longer after this one. I think that GUR already understood that with those losses it's no go. So compared to Belgorod operation, this one was not that good. If it was good at all, because the videos that were shown is that how Ukraine lands the forces there on helicopters. Luckily helicopters are okay. They were not hit by very cheap drones, but helicopters mean nothing compared to the life losses, and unfortunately there were life losses in this operation. How many? I'm not sure. It's definitely hard to judge on that Russian published video because it's the compilation, some of the drones, but it was exactly the same place with exact Ukrainian GUR operation. Well, this photo was published today with the Ukrainian General Commander Syrskyi, and there was Budanov. Some people say that Budanov is also in charge of the Pokrovsk defense operation. Well, he tried to use his GUR forces, but we saw that probably not that successful as he expected. It also means that the situation in Pokrovsk in general is not that good for Ukrainian army, unfortunately, because even if helicopters, even if special forces are used, that's not a good sign if Ukraine goes on those kind of the risks. Yeah, Ukrainian General Command published this video, Syrskyi Budanov, with some of the music, which I muted. They all look at those maps. It is hard to tell where they're being located themselves, but definitely they're concerned about Pokrovsk. As I am actually, there are some of the videos which were published in internet by our guys. I cannot show you them all, well, at least on this platform, but I may say that the intensity of the drone strikes from both of the sides, it's very, very huge. And for infantry, for our guys especially, it's kind of hard to operate out there. Usually they move from one building to another very fast, very briefly. And if they're spotted, there will be for sure numerous of the drone strikes on their positions. Well, even though Putin and the Russian military command tells about the full encirclement of the Ukrainian army group in Pokrovsk and Mirnograd, it is not happening for this hour. We may see that from Chervony Liman and from Pokrovsk itself, Russia is unable to close this gap, but even though there is no physical encirclement of the Ukrainian armed forces in Pokrovsk and Mirnograd, there is an operational encirclement. Well, this term, I guess, is absent in English, but in Russian and Ukrainian, there is the one, it's called оперативное окружение or оперативное оточение, so operational encirclement. It means that even without this physical encirclement of the pocket, the enemy still controls supplies using its drones, artillery, aviation strikes, and so on. Well, in this case, it is mostly a drone control, as you might understand the reality of the war. And that makes the supplies not possible for this entire Ukrainian group. So Ukraine will be forced to leave this area. And I would suggest to go from the place right away, especially for those guys who are stationed in Sukhy Yar, very far away from this bottleneck. For them, crossing all of this territory under drone attacks, it's very, very difficult. There was kind of the bad case that Russians occupied Avdiivka, and many of the Ukrainian soldiers were trapped, some of them wounded, and unfortunately Russians, then they came, they unalived everyone, wounded soldiers. They even published the video how our guys were just lying there. You understand that physically it's not possible to send here any sort of the pickup truck, evacuation vehicle, even tank will be kaputted by Russian drones right away. It is a reality of war. Unfortunately, Ukraine is facing it, and this helicopter landing operation was conducted just for tactical case. It's not the strategic unblocking of this pocket. No, it was just some very local thing, and the reason is known for Budanov himself. I cannot explain it from my perspective. I'm not aware about many things which are happening on the front lines, also in Pokrovsk, but judging on those kind of the videos published, we may came out with our own conclusion. With the military maps, with the drone videos, the general picture is understandable. The fights for Pokrovsk intensified. They're ongoing in the central part of the city. Ukraine tries to repel still Russian attacks. And Russians are not yet able to send their main forces because Ukraine also is using some of the drones. As it is reported at this hour, Ukrainian military command stated about the improvement of the situation in Pokrovsk. Well, with the military map updates, I don't see for now this improvement. Maybe tomorrow morning I'm gonna tell you more information about what kind of the improvement. What I see that Russians are now trying to take Rodinsk under control. They deployed even infantry vehicle there, which was kaputted, but they also operate with their artillery. And it is not a good sign. If Russians take Rodinsk, it's a no-go for this entire Ukrainian group. Well, Russians say about thousands of the Ukrainian soldiers potentially encircled here. No, there are way, way less. Because of the drones, again, Ukrainian forces are deployed here and there in Mirnograd and Pokrovsk, just occasionally. We are not speaking about the Bakhmut defense that Ukraine conducted with lots of the losses. Those kind of the cases will not repeat here, but still there could be very bad situations for Ukrainian infantry, especially, as I mentioned, far regions of Suhy Yar or maybe the southern part of Mirnograd. Well, in the north here, you can see that Ukraine takes more ground. Those are the good news. For the last 24 hours, Ukraine propelled forward, and here are just some of the occasional Russian groups being mostly trapped between Ukrainian positions in Shakhove and also Ukrainian positions in Novoshachove. I guess in the coming days they'll have to surrender to Ukrainian army or somehow to go to Pankivka, which is just partially under the Russian control. You know, guys, yesterday I watched this channel Combat Veteran Reacts, where he said also about Pokrovsk situation. Well, even though I agree with lots of the things which he stated, I had to disagree about one thing. Well, here Combat Veteran tells that it was a mistake from the Ukrainian military command to deploy the most capable forces to cut Russian attack towards Zoloty Kolodets, that those are just local villages out there, those are not important, and maybe Ukraine should have concentrated more forces to defend Pokrovsk. Well, here I had to disagree because I think that this direction was even more important for Ukraine compared to Pokrovsk, and let me tell you why. Here is this area Russians went to Zoloty Kolodets, which might look like some random place. There are lots of the small villages, but the fact it was the attempt of the Russian army to encircle the entire group of Ukraine in Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, Konstantinivka and Drushkivka. Moreover, back then Russians broke through the main Ukrainian defense line of Donbass. Behind that line there is basically nothing, just some of the small trenches, that's it. Behind Pokrovsk you may see there are still defense lines, and the main Donbass newly built defense line is ongoing through Zoloty Kolodets, Dobropilya, and here we go. So even if Russia occupies Pokrovsk, it's gonna be a very hard task for them to propel forward because Ukrainian forces they will just withdraw from this area and they will take the next defense lines and the next until the last one, in a worst case scenario, of course. For this reason, it's important for Ukraine to save the lives of our soldiers. That's the main task. Russians will take Pokrovsk, Mirnograd. It's the matter of time. But now Ukraine, with this local resistance in Pokrovsk, in Mirnograd, with all of those helicopter operations, which is the part of the global defense strategy, Ukraine is purchasing the time for Ukrainian army to regroup and to defend, for example, Dobropilya or small villages on the way, to reinforce defense. But here, and it is the August map, it was definitely a Russians' breakthrough. Ukraine was not expecting this Russians move. Russians didn't expect it themselves. They just tried, okay, here we go. Wow, we go ahead with the small army groups. Let's spur more. And they totally accumulated in this area roughly 2,000 soldiers. Just imagine 2,000 at this small piece of land. And they already broke through the main defense. And after it, free way to encircle Kramatorsk, Konstantinivka, that forms the Ukrainian defense of the entire region. And that's why it was a proper prompt decision from the Ukrainian command to send very capable forces to this area and to extinguish this breakthrough. Those are not the random villages here. No, this is a very crucial direction, even more important than Pokrovsk itself. And where does Russia send its attack convoys? To Pokrovsk? No, they attack with infantry. Here are multiple of the attacks of the Russian army. They try to boost it further. They want to get to Shakhov and then proceed to Kucherev Yar, to Zoloty Kolodets. That's what they want. Yeah, they want Pokrovsk and Mirnograd, but this is more important for them because they look at the wider picture to encircle Konstantinivka and Kramatorsk, Slaviansk. That's why this one is very important. It's crucial. But we see that Russians totally fucked up with this operation because Ukraine counterattacked there. They continue to fuck up with their infantry vehicles and tanks, which were just burned down by Ukraine. Something like 70 vehicles Russia lost there for the last months. It definitely shows that Russia wants the breakthrough once again. But after Ukraine deployed capable forces, 1st Azov Corps, 33rd Brigade, 93rd Brigade, 25th, for Russians, it's already a dead end. They cannot move further, at least for now. We'll see what they might do after Pokrovsk. Maybe they're gonna send reinforcements here and try this very slow attack operation as they did in Pokrovsk, advancing with 1, 2 soldiers, 3 soldiers maximum. That's why, by the way, they were successful at the first time in Zoloty Kolodets, infantry vendor. Oh, Ukrainian defense has a gap here. Let's go with more forces. So letting this breakthrough happen was a mistake of the Ukrainian defense. But again, later it was a good decision done in a matter of days, and I am very happy that we all screamed about it. All the influencers, the Ukrainian volunteers, the journalists, they say that, guys, will have now the threat for entire Donbass. Okay, Ukraine has to react on that. So this is very nice operation. At least here Ukrainian military command was, let's say, competent. And about Pokrovsk, Mirnograd, Ukrainian military command may conduct some of the counterattack actions just in attempt to move Ukrainian army out in more or less safe manner. And I hope that the worst case scenario could be avoided. And yeah, here's the northern front line. It shows a little bit movement of the Ukrainian army, and the Russian group, it will be just forced to surrender 100%. And the update in Pokrovsk yesterday, today, expansion of the gray area, and Russians are moving towards Moskovsk from this area. And as every day Russians take the ground in Dnipropetrovsk area, so here is the new update. Yeah, here they moved quite fast, and they're very close to Pokrovsk. The Ukrainian defense in the southern region is kind of weak. Russians unfortunately will propel until they reach this river with the Ukrainian defense and Pokrovsk itself. Kupiansk, well, there is no update for today. Everything as it was before. Russians are in the central part of the city fighting with the Ukrainian army group. About Rodensk, I checked out the information coming from our channels, and they say that Russians are using, yeah, definitely those are the thermobaric shells from the TOS-1 Solntsepek. They devastate absolutely everything. It's like a remote flamethrower. You cannot hide from those shells in the trenches, in the buildings. The only way maybe is to go to the basement and close somehow the access for the fire, for pressure, because it burns everything around the vast area. It is the most devastating weaponry, very hard to escape it. And just after those strikes of the Russian Solntsepek system, Russians sent infantry forces to Rodensk, but that attack failed. And we have the confirmation even from Robke, who stated that Ukraine used some of the strikes on Russian positions and Russians had to retreat, so Rodensk is still under Ukrainian control. Well, the good thing that Ukraine continued to hit Russian supplies behind the front lines. This is the occupied Kurachovo territory. There Ukraine operates with some sort of the Landsat-looking drones. Even the tracking software is very similar to what Russia is using. The name of the drone is Ram-2X Bulava, Ukrainian-made, but also using Western components. And there are some of the drone videos coming from Ukrainian side about the update in Pokrovsk. I can see this crossroad and some of the other locations. The 7th Corps does this operation, which is mostly conducted to get our guys out, from what I understood, from Pokrovsk and Mirnograd. And here we have the latest analysis published by the Michael 73 analytic as he sees the situation for Ukrainian army. Well, there should be a withdrawal, I agree with that, of the Ukrainian army group from Suhy Yar and all of those villages closer to Mirnograd, but even after it, Ukraine will not be capable to hold this area. Ukraine now does some of the counterattacks, also with this helicopter operation. In the best case scenario for Ukraine, the front line might go through this road and the railroad. It could also go like that, but I believe that Russians will be capable to get this area under their control. So this northern line could be a new defense line for Ukraine. Well, we'll see how it goes. It's for now the most logical outcome, but for this scenario to work, Ukraine should cut Russian advancement in the northern area. So far, then Ukraine keeps Rodensk under control. It is possible to do. And to the other news, yesterday Ukraine launched one of the biggest drone attacks on Russia. Hundreds of the drones penetrated into the Russian airspace, hitting even Moscow itself. This is some sort of the new Russian discotheque style, which were caused by electrical disturbances. There were also multiple of the blackouts. For example, in Zhukovsky district of Moscow, that's the place of the Russian airfield. You can see the part of the Moscow is okay, but the part there is no light. And here, those are just the flashlights, some with a laser point. Yep, it was like that. And it's not a small district, it's the big, wide one. The central part of Moscow is still okay. So if Russia wants to disturb Ukrainian logistics, Ukrainian energy sector, it may backfire on Russia because Ukraine is capable to do it.
Что-то прилетело. Вон, в мишке горит.
Okay, locals report about some of the kabooms happening in Crimea. I cannot define the exact location, but for the next day, Ukraine targets Russian occupied territories or Russian territories. As well as Russia today sent the ballistic missiles to Chernigiv Oblast of Ukraine, which is bordering Kiev Oblast. My friends, thank you so much for supporting my job on Patreon. The link for it is in the video description just below. And on membership of this YouTube channel, you may just check out join button, press it, and you'll join my membership to support this channel. If you don't have that opportunity or you don't wish to support me in that way, just press your like to this video and subscribe for the channel to boost this video in YouTube algorithms, because it is also helping a lot. Thank you so much for it. My friends, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are and have a great time.